So on homework 7, we're starting out, we're solving equations in chapter 1. Again, these ones have the parentheses in there and that we have to get rid of the parentheses first. And so we use our distributive property. Negative 2 times 8x would be negative 16x. Negative 2 times a negative 5 is a positive 10. The plus 2x that's on the outside of the parentheses just comes down. So we have negative 16x plus 10 plus 2x equals, on the other side of the equation, 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 5 is a positive 20. So first step, we got rid of the parentheses. The second step is to combine the like terms on the same side of the equals if you have more than 2 terms. On the left side here we have 3 terms. Tells me I can combine some stuff. In this case I can combine my x's. I'm not moving them, the signs aren't changing, I'm just putting them together. Negative 16 plus 2 is negative 14x. Plus 10 then equals 4x plus 20. Once we get it down so we have 2 terms on both sides, normally we'll move our variables to the left-hand side, our numbers to the right-hand side, and here we do the opposite because we're moving them to the opposite side of the equal sign. So we're going to minus that 4x to move it over and minus the 10 to move it over. Negative 14 minus 4 would give me negative 18x. 20 minus 10 is 10. My last step when I have negative 18x equals 10 is to get rid of my coefficient, and we do that by dividing. So I'm going to divide by that negative 18 and then simplify my fraction. Positive over negative is a negative. 10/18 reduces down to 5/9 if I divide them both by 2. So second one there wants us to solve for y again. First thing we're going to do is get rid of the parentheses. 5 times y would be 5y. 5 times a minus 3 is minus 15. We're going to bring down that minus 6 that's not in the parentheses. So 5y minus 15 minus 6 equals the other side. Negative 5 times a negative 4y would be positive 20y. Negative 5 times a positive 5 is going to be a negative 25, and we're going to bring down the minus 5y that's not in the parentheses. Again, we've got 3 terms on both sides of our equation this time, which tells me I can combine stuff on the left and on the right. On the left, I'm going to combine my numbers or my constant terms. On the right, I can combine the ones with the variables. So I'm still going to have the 5y. Negative 15 minus 6, I add and keep the sign, so negative 21. On the other side, 20 minus 5 would give me 15y and minus 25 that I'm going to bring down. So 5y minus 21 equals 15y minus 25. My next step, I'm going to put my variables to the left, my numbers to the right by doing the opposite. So since that's a positive 15y, I'm going to subtract 15y. Since this is negative 21, I'm going to add 21. 5 minus 15 would give me negative 10y. And negative 21, or negative 25 plus 21 would be negative 4. So negative 10y equals negative 4. My last step, dividing by my coefficient of negative 10 and simplifying that fraction. I've got a negative over a negative, so it's going to become positive 4/10. Again, I can divide by 2, so 2/5 would end up being my answer there. So number 3, I could let you guys help me with this one. If I get rid of my parentheses there on the left-hand side, I would have what?
Negative 2y minus 8.
Minus 8. And on the right side,
4y minus 2 plus 8y plus 6.
Plus 6, exactly. So negative 2y minus 8 equals 4y minus 2 plus 8y plus 6. Just two terms on this side, so I'm not going to do anything with that side. But on the other side, I've got 4 terms. I can combine both my y's and my numbers. And so if I do that, I'm going to get
12y plus 4.
12y plus 4. Now I've got it down to where I have 2 terms on both sides. I want to move my y's to the left and my numbers to the right, so I should do what next?
Is that 12y
Minus my 12y
plus 8?
and plus my 8, exactly. I then would get
Negative
negative 14y
plus 12.
equals 12. And my last step, I'm going to divide by my coefficients and simplify my fraction. And so y is going to equal
6/7.
negative 6/7. So positive over a negative makes the whole fraction negative. We like to put that on the outside instead of on the bottom of our fraction. The next kind are solving those ones with fractions. If you remember from introductory algebra or intermediate algebra before, anytime we have fractions in our equations, because most people don't like working with fractions, we can get rid of the fractions by multiplying by the least common multiple of the denominator. In this case, if I have a 3, a 5, and a 2, they don't have any common factors, so I would just take the 3 times the 5 times the 2, and I get 30. I'm going to multiply each of those fractions by 30, and the denominator should all go into 30 evenly so that I can then cancel those fractions out of there. If you're really bad with fractions, you could probably multiply with your calculator, but I'm just going to do some canceling. Is that this dinging? Still says it's recording. 3 goes into 30 10 times, so 10 times 1u gives me 10u. If you take 30 times 1/3 on your calculator, you get 10. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times my negative 7 would be minus 42. If you take negative 7/5 times 30 on your calculator, you get negative 42. And 2 goes into 30 15 times. 15 times negative 1 is negative 15. Now when you multiply by that common denominator, it should always be a positive number that you're multiplying by, so none of your signs should change when you're doing that step. This one's still positive, this one's still negative, that one's still negative. Now we have an equation that hopefully is easier to solve than all those fractions. I want to get the u by itself. I have to add my 42 to the other side. If you take negative 15 plus 42, you would get 27. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide by my 10. And I can't reduce that fraction down. I am just going to leave the improper fraction. And so 27/10. And I see that I should pay attention to see if I need to change some of these, because all of my denominators are the same. Anyway, on here again, I have a denominator of a 5, a 2, and a 3, and so my least common multiple again will be 30. So I'm going to multiply everything by 30. So again, when I'm canceling, 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times my negative 2 would give me negative 12. On my other side, 2 goes into 30 15 times. 15 times 1x is 15x. And then 3 goes into 30 10 times. 10 times my negative 4 would be minus 40. So negative 12 equals 15x minus 40. If I want to solve that for x, the next thing I should do is move my 40 over, so I'm going to add 40 to negative 12. Negative 12 plus 40 would give me 28. So 28 equals 15x. And then, of course, my last step is dividing by my coefficient and looking to see if I can reduce, but 28 and 15 don't have any common factors, and so 28/15 is just going to be my answer for x. Number 6. We have negative 1/3 plus 1/2 w equals negative 1/5. So if we multiply by our common denominator, we'd be multiplying by 30 again, right? So if you take 30 times that negative 1/3, you're going to get 10. 3 goes into 30 10 times, and 10 times negative 1 means I'm going to get negative 10, right? Plus 1/2 w times 30 would give you 15w. 2 goes into 30 15 times, and 15 times 1w is positive 15w. And then negative 1/5 of 30, 6. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times my negative 1 means I'm going to have a negative 6 there. So if I'm going to solve that, the next thing I'd want to do is add the 10. 15w then equals 4. And my last step, divide by 15. So w equals 4/15. And then when you get to 7, 8, 9, they just make them a little longer. Keep in mind when you have a whole number or just the plain variable, it's over 1, so you really don't have to worry about that one when you're looking at the common denominator. I've got a 3, 3, and a 4, so my least common multiple there would be 12, right? 3 times 4 is 12. So again, I'm just going to multiply everything times 12, including that whole number. But on the fractions, I'm going to be able to cancel. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 4 times my 7x is 28x. 3 goes into 12 4 times again. 4 times my minus 4, minus 16. Here I have to do the 12 times the x. There's no canceling, so I get 12x. And then 4 goes into 12 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. So 28x minus 16 equals 12x plus 9. So I want to solve that. Since I have both numbers and variables, I'm going to move my variables to the left, my numbers to the right. So I'm going to minus my 12x and add my 16 to move it over. 28 minus 12 would give me 16x, and 9 plus 16 is 25. And then, of course, my last step is dividing. So x is going to equal 25 over 16. I can't simplify that, so that's going to be my answer. Number 8 then. We have a 3, a 2, and a 6 in our denominator, so our least common multiple would be 6, right? So I'm going to take 6 times each term up here Alex likes to put those parentheses first. I just skip that step. In the first one, I don't have a fraction, so 6 times 7y, just going to give me that 42y. On the rest where I have fractions, I can cancel. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 2 times my -4 would be -8. Equals 2 goes into 6, 3 times 5y, 15y. And then 6 goes into 6 one times a -7, going to be -7. So 42y minus 8 equals 15y minus 7. So I want to solve that. I like to move my variables to the left, my numbers to the right, so I'm going to minus my 15y to move that over and add my 8. (42 minus 15 would give me 27y. Oops, 27y. -7 plus 8 is 1. And then, of course, I'm going to divide. And so y is going to equal 1 over 27. 1/27. So number 9, my common denominator on that one, we would use 15, because I have 5s and 3s, so 15. So I'm going to multiply each term times my 15. So 15 times 5u would give you 75u. 15 times my 1/5. Gives you plus 3, because 5 goes into 15, 3 times 1 is 3. Equals 15 times my 2/5 u.
6u.
6u. 5 goes into 15, 3 times 2u is 6u. And 4/3 times 15 plus 20. 3 goes in there 5 times, and 5 times 4 is 20. So if I'm going to solve that for u, the next thing I want to do is minus the 6u to move it over here, and minus the 3 to move it over there. So 75 minus 6 69u. 20 minus 3 is 17. And so u is going to equal 17 over 69. I don't believe you can reduce that down. So that's going to be your answer. 10, 11, 12, same concept. I have fractions. I want to multiply by my common denominator to get rid of the fraction. In this case, I have an 8 and a 2, and since 2 divides into 8, 8 would be my least common multiple. So I'm going to multiply 8 times the 9 in front. I'm going to take 8 times this first fraction, and I'm going to take 8 times that second fraction. So 8 times 9 in front is 72. That's going to equal, and then I'm saying 8 goes into 8 one time, and I'm using my distributive property. 1 times 9y is 9y. 1 times 5 is plus 5. Here's where I want to be careful because of this sign. If it's a positive, you're pretty safe, but if it's a negative, you've got to watch the sign in there. 2 goes into 8 4 times. It's a plus in front of that, so I'm taking a positive 4 times each of those. So I'm going to have a positive 4y and a minus 24. Since I've got 4 terms over there on that right-hand side, I'm going to combine my like terms. And so 9 plus 4 would give me 13y. 5 minus 24 would be negative 19. And so 72 is going to equal 13y minus 19. Solving that for y, I want to get my numbers together. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 19. This is one case where I wouldn't move my variable to the left-hand side because there's not 2 variables. And so if I take 72 plus 19, I must get 91 to equal 13y. And then if I divide by my 13, 91 divided by 13, this should go in there evenly because all of these ones on Alex happen to come out to nice whole number answers. So if I take 91 divided by 13, I get 7. If you're getting anything other than a nice whole number answer, an integer, then you probably made a mistake somewhere in your work. So just put a little note there that you're going to always get nice whole number answers. So the next one, I have a denominator of a 6 and a denominator of a 7. So 6 times 7 is going to give me 42. I'm going to multiply the first fraction here times 42. I'm going to multiply that second fraction times 42. And I also have to take that 5 times 42. So 6 goes into 42 7 times. 7 times 5x would be 35x. 7 times a positive 4 is a positive 28. Equals. 7 goes into 42 6 times. 6 times 2x is 12x. 6 times 8 is a positive 48. Plus 42 times 5. Let's see, that must be about 210 it looks like. Notice I didn't rearrange the problem at all. I just left it in the order it was. Here I only have 2 terms, but here I have 3 terms, so I can go ahead and put my numbers together. So 35x plus 28 is going to equal 12x plus 258 when I add my 48 and my 210. So on this one, I've got both variables and numbers on both sides, so I'm going to move my x's to the left and my numbers to the right. So I got to minus that 12x and minus my 28. 35 minus 12 looks like it is 23x. 258 minus 28 is 230. And then I can go ahead and divide by that 23. And it goes in there nice and even 10 times. So number 12, if we do that one, we have a 7 and a 2 for our denominators. Our least common denominator would be 14. So I'm going to multiply everything times 14, or in this case, I'm going to let you do it. So 14 times negative 24. What was that? 336? Negative? Negative 336. I didn't multiply it. I'm just going to believe you. On the next one, we're going to cancel. 7 goes into 14 2 times, so now I have to distribute that 2, and I would get 6w minus 14. Here's the one you have to watch because there's that minus sign in front. 2 goes into 14 7 times, but you're going to put the minus in front of that 7, so you're going to multiply by that negative 7. And so if you do that, you get
Negative 49.
negative 49W
Negative 21.
minus 21. So be really careful when you've got the minus in front that you remember to put it up there and distribute it up. That's usually the mistake people make. Combining my like terms then, if I put my W's together and my numbers together over here on the right side, negative 336 is going to equal what over there?
Negative 43W.
Negative 43W
Negative 35.
minus 35. I want to solve that for W. The next thing I probably want to do is add the 35. So if I take negative 336 and I add 35 to it, I end up with, what was that? Negative 301? Negative 301 equals negative 43W then. And then I'm going to divide by negative 43 and we get positive 7. A nice whole number answer for W. (13, 14, and 15 are solving those that you don't always get a nice answer. That sometimes we get a no solution answer, sometimes we get all real numbers are solutions. If you end up getting 0W equals a number other than 0, that's when you get the no solution. Because I can't take 0 times anything and end up with a 5. If I get 0W equals 0, 0 times any number always is 0, that's the all real numbers are solutions. Otherwise, it'll solve like we normally solve it. So, getting rid of my parentheses on the top one, I'm going to have 5W plus 5 minus my W that's not in the parentheses equals, on the other side multiplying by 3, 3W minus 3, and then the plus 7 that's not in parentheses. So combining my like terms here, 5W minus W would be 4W plus 5 equals, on the other side, 3W and negative 3 plus 7 is a positive 4. Now I can tell because my coefficients in front of my W's are different that this one's going to solve and give me a number answer. So I'm going to just go ahead and keep solving. I'm going to subtract my 3W and subtract my 5. 4 minus 3 gives me W, and 4 minus 5 is negative 1. So W equals negative 1. So you're going to click the little circle in front of the W and then type negative 1 there in the box. The second one, if I'm going to solve that one, multiplying by my 3W minus 6. The minus 5's on the outside of the parentheses, so I'm just going to bring it down. On the other side, multiplying by negative 2, I get negative 2W, and the negative times the negative, so minus 4. I can combine my like terms here. 3 minus 5 is negative 2W minus 6 equals negative 2W minus 4. Now I can see here that my coefficients are exactly the same. It's going to be one of those special cases. So if I just go ahead and solve it, I add my 2W and I add my 6, and I get 0W's equals 2. So if I get 0W equals 2, which one of those choices should be my answer? No solution. I can't take 0 times anything and get an answer of 2. So no solution. So number 14 there, if I go ahead and multiply by my negative 3, I have negative 3w minus 3 plus my 7w, that's not in parentheses. On the other side, multiplying by the 4, 4w plus 4 minus the 7, that's not in parentheses. So negative 3w minus 3 plus 7w equals 4w plus 4 minus 7. Combining my like terms, negative 3w plus 7w would give me 4w minus 3. And over here, combining my like terms, I get 4w minus 3. Notice I have the exact same thing on both sides. When I solve that, if I subtract my 4w and add my 3, I get 0w equals 0. And if I get 0w equals 0, my solution would be all real numbers will work. Anything times 0 always gives me 0. So I could plug in 952 and it would work. On the second one there, getting rid of my parentheses, negative 3w, negative 3 times 4 would be minus 12, minus my 2w that's not in parentheses. On the other side, multiplying by 2, I get 2w plus 2. So combining my like terms over here on my left side, I have a negative 3 minus a 2, so negative 5w minus 12 equals 2w plus 2. This one's going to be one that's going to solve for a nice answer because I don't have the same number in front of my variables. So, minusing my 2w and adding my 12, I get negative 7w equals 14. And so when I divide, w equals negative 2. Last one here, I'm going to let you guys help me with. So, getting rid of my parentheses here on the left side, I would have 6y plus 6 minus 9 equals, on the right side, 4y minus 4 plus my 2y. Combining my like terms on the left side, I'm going to combine my numbers, so I'm going to get 6y minus 3. On the right side, I'm going to combine my variables, and I'm going to get 6y minus 4. If I go through solving this, I'm going to subtract my 6y and add my 3, so I would get 0y equals negative 1. And if I get 0y equals negative 1, my answer is no solution. I can't take 0 times anything and get anything other than 0. 0 times anything's always 0. And the last one on there, if I get rid of my parentheses on the left side, I'm going to have
4y plus 4 plus y.
y, so 4y plus 4 y equals, on the other side,
8y negative 8 minus 8 plus 6.
8y minus 8 plus 6. Combining my like terms, on the left side I can combine my y's.
5y.
So 5y plus 4 equals, on the other side I can combine my numbers.
8y minus
8y minus 2. So this one's going to solve for a nice answer. If I'm going to solve it, I'm going to
negative 8
subtract my 8y
minus 4
and minus my 4. And I would get
negative 3y equals negative 6.
negative 3y equals negative 6, and dividing, y equals positive 2. So y equals 2. All right, that should be the next 5 things there. They're kind of long, so I only put 5 on that paper.